We often associate intelligence with morality, but the truth is far more complex. Today, we're delving into the disturbing cases of individuals with high IQs who committed heinous crimes. What makes a brilliant mind turn dark? So let's find out who's on the list. 8. Shing Lee. 36-year-old Umar Abdullah and his wife began suffering from excruciating headaches during the summer of 2023 after they started noticing a strange, chemical-like odor in their Tampa Bay apartment. They also experienced shortness of breath, nausea, drowsiness, dizziness, burning of the eyes, and eventually began losing clumps of hair while their baby went completely bald. Determined to trace the source of the smell, Abdullah hid a camera in a potted plant near the entrance to his home. He was shocked to discover that his downstairs neighbor, 36-year-old chemistry PhD student Shing Lee, was injecting a substance into the crack beneath his front door. Abdullah and his wife had been neighbors with Lee for about a year, and while they had gotten along with him at first, the relationship between the parties soured after the couple became parents. After the baby was born, Lee had started complaining about normal, everyday noises, like the sounds of a toilet flushing and drawers being opened and closed. His criticism became so constant that the Abdullahs constantly walked on eggshells and were afraid to make any noise, even during the middle of the day. The couple turned the disturbing video over to investigators, who identified the noxious substance as a combination of the opioid painkillers, methadone and hydrocodone, which are extremely easy to overdose and get sick on, or worse. Lee was charged with battery, aggravated stalking, and dispersing of a chemical agent, but was deported to China in the middle of the case. While he avoided criminal consequences for his actions, the good news is that he'll likely never be allowed to step foot in the US again. 7. Emmanuel Espinosa. In April of 2024, 21-year-old Emmanuel "Manny" Espinosa dialed 911 from his mother's home in Frostproof, Florida, and confessed to killing her. The fourth-year pre-med student had stabbed 46-year-old Alvia Espinosa more than 70 times during a visit from the University of Florida that he had made at the victim's request. Prior to the stabbing, Emmanuel's future looked promising. Known for his brilliance, he had graduated high school at the top of his class just a handful of years earlier. He's now facing charges of first-degree murder and evidence tampering, and is looking at a potential lifetime behind bars. Alvia's doorbell camera captured footage of Emmanuel entering the house while holding a small knife behind his back. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd described the homicide as one of the most bizarre murders his agency had dealt with in a very long time. Emmanuel reportedly has no history of mental illness and did not appear to be intoxicated or under the influence of drugs at the time of the deadly knife attack. When asked by police why he killed his mother, he stated that he hadn't liked her in years and that he had just been angry. He remains detained without bail at the Polk County Jail pending the outcome of his case. 6. Jeffrey Pine. In May of 2011, 51-year-old Ruth Pine was bludgeoned and stabbed to death in the garage of her Highland Township, Michigan home by her 21-year-old son, Jeffrey Pine. The community was shocked by the arrest of the young man, who had no previous run-ins with the law and had graduated at the top of his high school class just a few years earlier. Jeffrey had also been a star athlete during his teen years and was pursuing a biology degree at the time of his mother's murder. Some people even refused to believe that he was capable of committing such a heinous act. But things weren't as picture-perfect as they seemed at the Pine household, according to prosecutors, who argued that Jeffrey's relationship with his mother was strained by her mental instability. The state claimed that Ruth had inflicted years of abuse on her son. Just a year before the murder, she had been arrested for assaulting Jeffrey, but the charges were dropped in exchange for her agreeing to take her medication and get help. Jeffrey's ex-girlfriend backed up these claims while testifying during his murder trial in 2012, claiming that Ruth frequently attacked her son and was dangerous when she stopped taking her medication. Ruth's sister told a much different narrative, however, claiming that the deceased woman was not the monster she was being depicted as in the courtroom. Regardless of Ruth's mental state, Jeffrey's attorneys argued that their client had nothing to do with her murder. Bottom line, they claimed that Ruth had been killed by home intruders, while pointing out that there was no forensic evidence linking Jeffrey to the crime scene. He was nevertheless found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 20 to 60 years in prison, with an earliest possible release date of 2031. World List isn't the same without you. Be sure you're tuning in by hitting that notification bell to stay updated on all the craziness. 5. Din Bowman. 42-year-old Yancey Knoll was on his way home from work in Seattle one evening in 2012 when the driver of a silver BMW pulled up next to him at an intersection and shot him in the head 4 times through their passenger side window, killing him instantly. The shooter sped off, but witnesses were able to provide police with enough information to create a composite sketch, which was released to the public along with a description of the car. An anonymous tip pointed investigators toward 29-year-old Din Bowman, who bore a striking resemblance to the composite sketch. He also lived just blocks from where the shooting occurred and drove a car matching the description of the killer's vehicle. Bowman had a genius IQ and was just 12 years old when he attended college. He owned an engineering business and was married to an attractive young dentist named Jennifer. At first glance, he seemed like an unlikely suspect. But Bowman refused to speak to detectives, while Jennifer responded to every single question with the answer, "I don't know," causing law enforcement to suspect that they were hiding something. Investigators were even more perplexed while searching the couple's home, which was barely furnished, despite their high income, and was chock full of guns. A search of Bowman's electronic devices further revealed that he was obsessed with death and murder. His phone contained a training video about shooting through glass, and police realized that his passenger window was broken. Bowman was detained on suspicion of first-degree murder and claimed during his trial that he had shot Knoll in self-defense, claiming that the victim had struck him in the head with a wine bottle during a fit of road rage. The jury found him guilty as charged, and he was sentenced to 29 years in prison. 4. Michael Loudor. Michael Loudor was born in 1963 and grew up just north of the Bronx in New Rochelle, New York. From a young age, it was clear that he was intellectually gifted, so it was no surprise when he graduated from Yale a year early during the 1980s with 2 majors and summa cum laude honors. Loudor's path to success began to derail shortly after college, when he began suffering from schizophrenia. He became extremely paranoid and ended up quitting his job due to his suspicion that his work phone was being tapped. His delusions worsened over time as he began to believe that his friends were cult members and that his parents had been replaced by neo-Nazi agents. After undergoing treatment at a mental hospital, Loudor began attending Yale Law School, where he met and began dating Caroline Costello. He graduated with honors despite his mental health struggles, but failed to land steady employment. During the 90s, the New York Times featured a story about Loudor's decision to go public about his schizophrenia, leading to a $600,000 book deal. He also sold the rights to his life story to filmmakers. But these projects ground to a halt as his symptoms worsened. Costello was often the target of Loudor's delusions. On more than one occasion, she was locked out of their shared apartment due to Loudor's belief that she was an alien imposter. But she continued to support him, unaware that she was in danger. In June of 1998, Loudor stabbed Costello to death during a severe psychotic episode at their home. police found Costello's body while performing a welfare check at the request of a concerned relative, and Loudor was picked up on the Cornell University campus nearly 200 miles away. He was initially charged with second-degree murder, but was deemed not guilty by reason of mental defect. Loudor was ordered to undergo inpatient treatment at a state hospital for court-ordered patients, where he remains to this day. 3. Neil Sutcliffe. 37-year-old London-based artist Neil Sutcliffe was considered a creative genius. He was extremely well-liked by all who knew him, which was why people had a hard time understanding why someone viciously stabbed him to death during a music festival at a remote Portuguese commune in September of 2023. Sutcliffe was attending the 4-day-long Mad Hatter's Tea Party in the off-grid Lybe Linha venture community when a 28-year-old British plumber named Joshua Menkins attacked him in a drug-induced rage. Witnesses reported seeing Menkins taking hard drugs prior to the murder, and police claim that the psychiatric tests indicate that the killer was suffering from psychosis when he killed Sutcliffe. After murdering the victim, Menkins hid his body beneath tree branches and clothing. According to the most recent available updates on the case, Menkins was remanded to a psychiatric hospital for further testing and treatment while facing a murder charge. It's unclear whether police believe the murder was random or targeted, as authorities remain tight-lipped about the case for the time being. 2. Paul Curry. 45-year-old Linda Kincaid met and began dating 32-year-old two-time Jeopardy champion Paul Curry in 1989, while working at a nuclear power plant in Southern California. Curry was also a member of Mensa, an organization for people whose IQ scores rank in the top 2%. Kincaid was attracted to Curry's intelligence, and their relationship grew serious. In 1992, after 3 years of dating, the couple married and moved into a house in San Clemente that Kincaid had paid for. They seemed happy, but there were problems lurking beneath the surface. Barely a month after the pair exchanged vows, Kincaid told a friend that Paul no longer seemed interested in being intimate with her. He was also pressuring her to take out a $1 million life insurance policy. During the summer of 1993, Kincaid began falling mysteriously ill with severe gastrointestinal symptoms. Doctors began to suspect that someone was poisoning her during her first emergency room visit, when they noticed that her IV had been tampered with. When Kincaid got sick again 5 months later, hospital staff members prohibited Curry from entering her room due to the poisoning suspicions. Kincaid's friends also became suspicious and began begging her to leave Curry, fearing that he was going to kill her. But she stayed with him, and the decision proved tragic in June of 1994, when Curry dialed 911 and reported that his wife wasn't breathing. She died from her illness, and a postpartum toxicology exam showed that she had sleeping pills and an alarmingly high amount of nicotine in her system, despite being a non-smoker. Investigators were almost certain that Kincaid had been murdered by her husband, but the case spent years at a standstill until a renewed effort to solve it led to Curry's arrest for murder in 2010. By then, Curry had relocated to Salina, Kansas, where he was living with a new wife and working as a building code inspector. Prosecutors lacked forensic evidence linking Curry to Kincaid's death, but they felt they had a strong enough circumstantial case to move forward with the case. A jury agreed, and Curry was found guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances for poisoning and murder for financial gain in 2014. More than 2 decades after Kincaid was killed, he received the maximum sentence of life without parole. 1. William Bradford Bishop Jr. 39-year-old U.S. Department of State worker William Bradford Bishop Jr. held several college degrees, including one from Yale University, spoke 5 languages, and was a highly skilled outdoorsman. But he struggled financially, became burned out at his job, and suffered from anxiety. After being passed over for a promotion in 1976, He bludgeoned his wife, mother, and 3 sons to death with a hammer at the family's Bethesda, Maryland home, and drove their bodies to North Carolina, where he buried them in a shallow grave and set them on fire. Bishop was last seen at a sporting goods store in Jacksonville, North Carolina the next day. Roughly 2 weeks after he fled Maryland, his car was found abandoned in Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Both state and federal authorities issued warrants for his arrest, but they never managed to catch up with him. Investigators believe that Bishop may have assumed a new identity and possibly even spent years hiding in plain sight. In 2021, a Massachusetts woman named Kathy Gilchrist discovered that she was Bishop's biological daughter from a relationship prior to his marriage. She had been given up for adoption and knows very little about the nature of her biological parents' relationship. Unfortunately, this newly discovered connection did not bring law enforcement any closer to finding Bishop, who would be 96 years old if he's still alive today. While the FBI is not actively investigating the case, the agency is still accepting tips and has vowed to follow up on any information that falls into their hands. Thanks for watching World List, your guide to the dark side of human nature. Would you rather be known for being highly intelligent but not very likable, or having a winning personality and a reputation for being an airhead? Why would one be better than the other? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe. Hopefully you don't end up on the list.